Hello and welcome to today's episode of Esri's Fire and Emergency Services webinar. Today we're talking about San Antonio Fire Department's use of WebGIS for incident intelligence and resource management during special events. So we use these webinars to promote the use of GIS and support fire department missions internationally. And today we've got an excellent case study of how one city deployed an all hazards approach to resource management using cloud-based GIS services. So we're very excited to have San Antonio personnel online to discuss the solution they implemented. So today I am happy to have with us San Antonio Fire Department Division Chief Doug Berry, Division Chief Brian Norris, and I am Mike Cox, your Fire and EMS Industry Manager. So what I'm going to do right now is turn it over to Chief Berry and Chief Norris for self-introduction. So Chief, if you could pick up here and tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you, Mike. I am the Division Chief Doug Berry. I oversee our special event planning, our Fusion Center liaison, and the Arson Bureau. Basically, I'm in charge of all the special events that come into San Antonio and setting up all the liaison for all the different logistical things that go with that.
And Chief Norris?
Yes, hello, and I'm Brian Norris. I'm the Division Chief of the Planning and Analytics Division for the San Antonio Fire Department. Basically, I'm the department nerd and try to supplement the department in any way we can, as well as doing any annexation, analytics, and tracking that we can for the fire department.
Thank you, Chief. And I'm Mike Cox again, your Fire and EMS Industry Manager. I am essentially your liaison officer for all things GIS. So certainly if things interest you throughout the webinar today, or you have any questions about Fire and EMS agency use of GIS, you can reach out to me at any time. So we use these we use these webinars again to promote the use of geospatial data by the fire service. And there are very few aspects of fire service operations that can't be improved upon or efficiencies added through the use of GIS. And that could be planning, accreditation, certainly operations and recovery. And we promote this specifically because the challenges we face change every day. So whether we're talking about the opioid overdose issue, wildfires, things of that nature, just the impact and the frequency of these events, social unrest, public health issues, severe weather, our priorities and missions can change daily. So we have to have the ability to build efficiencies into our daily operations, and we can't just continue to build fire stations and hire firefighters. So what you see today through WebGIS is the ability to support a lot of different workflows, a lot of different missions quickly, and it's easier and easier to use. You see fire stations, firefighters in fire stations building maps and building information products on a daily basis. And really it's a communications platform. It's the ability to share data with all of our stakeholders, all of our agencies during an all hazards response. So it doesn't matter what radio system they're on or what computer system they're using, you can share this information as long as they have access on any device to a web browser. And that's what WebGIS really accomplishes. It's the ability to have that common operating picture, that incident intelligence given to the right person at the right time to make good decisions. So again, we're making these products in fire stations. You obviously still need the support of a strong GIS department. And I know Chief Berry and Chief Norris will talk about the development of their solution for some of their special events. But again, the ease of use is incredible and it's changing daily. Also, the ability to support missions in the field with our mobile field applications and the ability for the public to engage through the use of social media and that two-way collaboration or two-way communication between public safety agencies and the public at large. So very simple to deploy solutions that really impact our day-to-day operations, our response to significant events, and as we're going to see an excellent case study of today, our ability to deal with special events and large events that impact our community. So we can take any kind of data, any data you can get a hold of, and give it that spatial, that where component, and put it in a common view for people to easily understand and make good decisions based on verified incident intelligence. So at all levels of government, all aspects of the response, whether it's that division group supervisor in the field, or whether it's unified commander in a command post, or our emergency management staff in the EOC, we're all getting the same data and the same view at the same time. So actionable data in real time is what's so important, and the advantage of using the WebGIS system. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Berry. Doug, if you want to pick up here, and we'll start discussing that case study of San Antonio.
All right, thank you, Mike. This will be just a general overview of kind of what we did for the Final Four as it came to San Antonio last year. And we kind of rolled all of this into our Fiesta, which is like Mardi Gras here in San Antonio, 10 days of celebrations throughout the city, spread, over numerous square miles of the downtown area. So managing all that was kind of just something that we'd been looking at before, and the Final Four was a catalyst for us putting all this together. When I came to special event planning, almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, one of the first things I wanted to do was look at the way we kind of operated. I had sat down with my counterparts, being assigned to the Fusion Center, where we have our police department, our local police department intel branch. I sat down with them and we went over some things about how we managed special events, and the Final Four being such a large one, it was on the radar for quite some time. So some of the questions I posed to them were, how do we look at things? How are we doing this data management? And much to my surprise, we were still using a lot of hard maps, a lot of paper maps. So when I posed some of these questions to them, two of our analysts had been to an Esri conference and seen some of the software that was available. Okay, let's go back one. Brian's advancing my slides, so it's not my fault. No, so really the problem we looked at was, how are we going to look at these multiple simultaneous venues going on? The way the Final Four was structured, we have events at our local stadium, our Alamo Dome. We had Fan Fest, which was going on in the convention center area, which was basically set up of different events to kind of bring people in. And then we had a Music Fest, which was an outdoor music venue of about 30,000 people all through the day. So we really had three major events going on at the same time in close proximity. So how are we going to manage and put everybody in that common operating picture? How did we track the 911 calls for service that weren't generated through 911? When people walk up, they see a uniform, they'll walk up, report suspicious activity, they'll report somebody who's sick or ill, you'll have a fight breakout, all those things. How are we doing those common things without being tracked through 911? I wanted to improve situational awareness through all entities, fire, EMS, police, any stakeholder really. We had the ability to give them this common operating picture, which included infrastructure, federal partners, and everybody else, as you'll see here in a minute. We did have vehicle-based tracking through our CAD system, but how did we track individuals? We didn't have a lot of vehicles out there in these venues. You put a medic on foot or a police officer on foot in a crowd of 30,000 people in a music venue, you lose them. How are you able to track them? How could I see where they were in case I needed to redeploy them somewhere else, or if they needed something? And really, again, that common operating picture was huge for us, being able to spread that over multiple venues so that everybody was looking at the same thing. So if we had an incident, we were all already on the same page, saving us valuable time to consolidate our resources to be able to handle an incident. So the old solution, again, like I said, was we had paper maps pinned up everywhere. We had mobile command posts set up everywhere. We were using these staged assets to help, really manage foot patrols and foot-based assets. They would monitor the 911 CAD system, and all this was done over the radio. All of this was another 2 or 3 TAC channels that they had taken up over the radio. So we were still relying heavily on that infrastructure of paper maps, handheld radios, if you could hear it, and really a lot of radio traffic to coordinate all of this. So that handsome man in the middle there, in case you don't know, is Mike, who's moved to the dark side now. No, Mike's now your representative over there for public safety. Mike was in a video I saw for Esri that came out of the Henrico County, Virginia, and how they used this product in their venue to help manage some of the resources they had at the Speedway. So it was very telling for me to see that, because I was really looking at, okay, how do we look at this common operating picture with all these moving pieces? The video was very detailed into how that could be done with the Esri product, the online product. AT&T did step in and help us too. We were very fortunate that right around the time this was going on, AT&T FirstNet came online. And I believe we were the first large venue to utilize the FirstNet product in conjunction with a large real live venue. So looking at what we were going to do, and I can't say enough about our GIS guys, because by the time we got the green light, I think we were like 3 weeks away from Final Four, and these guys put together all of this background in a short amount of time. So they created the footprint maps. They looked at these files. They created our hot and warm cold zones so that we had basically geofencing around all of our venues, and the venues, all 3 venues pretty much were contained within a geofence themselves. We had live call automated the AVL data coming in. We were looking at the roles and symbols, so we coded everything going in there. We had closed circuit TV links. You know, we were very fortunate that the Final Four had its own network and kind of allowed us access. So we had hundreds of cameras online through this that we could click on and view. And not only could we see exactly where they were on the map, but we could get the live picture from the camera feed. This was very important for us to be able to, like I said, create that common operating real-time picture. These are just more maps of the briefings that we give after actions and stuff. We could pin anything on these maps to the history, looking at them and saying where we had calls for service, where we had units deployed, and really looking forward after every day's venue and saying, hey, what can we improve upon? Where were our hot spots? You know, can we redeploy some of the assets in different places? Or did the venue change itself to where this is going to be a larger concert than usual? Do we need to redeploy just based on the venue itself? We were able to take that common operating picture, and what you're seeing in this slide here is the actual picture of our operations center in Austin, Texas, okay? The state operations center. So we were able to pipe our command picture to Austin so that they were watching what we were watching. So if we did have anything that required outside resources, mutual aid agreements or state resources, they were looking at the exact same thing we were. And in great detail, calls for service. I mean, they could tell where the exact patrolman was. You know, they couldn't manipulate any of this, but they were definitely on the same operating picture we were. We did this in a number of venues through our EOC, you know, our fusion center, our mobile command post had this picture as well.
Doug, I think it's important to point out a little bit about how the mapping worked in there, to where if everybody can imagine a very large scale event, something like at a huge NASCAR racetrack or something like the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, this is the scale of something that we're talking about, is that we were able to go in there and actually pin each type of booth. So when you're running calls in those types of area and you're looking at the foot type of units that are being dispatched there, they're getting dispatched to the cotton candy booth. Well, that's not normally there in your GIS system. So our personnel were having a hard time trying to figure out where to go. With the software capabilities of this system, we were able to actually go in and pre-plan and drop pins on all of the different booths. So when somebody from inside the concert would say, hey, we're at the front left part of the stage by the beer booth, we would have a better idea of exactly where to send our resources, and we can track them through there also. So.
Great, thank you, Brian. And that's a great point to make up. Yeah, we did plot in a lot of things that weren't normally where they were supposed to be. The outdoor music venue was nothing more than a giant grass plot before this, and then afterwards it turned into a full-fledged amphitheater outside.
Okay, and we have our first poll question. So we'll extend this question, and please ask the audience to respond. Does your agency develop incident maps using GIS during special events, much like what Chief Barry and Chief Norris have already demonstrated? So your options here are: my agency does not develop incident maps for special events. We use primarily printed mapping products for special events, or we are using GIS to provide dynamic map products to responders. So again, does your agency develop incident maps using GIS during special events? And we'll wait just a second there for folks to respond. And so we can see the response there. 28% are not using incident maps for special events. 37% are using primarily printed maps, and 35% are using GIS and dynamic mapping products for the responders in the field. So that's a pretty good mix there. Certainly some opportunities to engage the technology that likely most of the fire departments and EMS departments online already have access to. Chief, before you jump back in, I wanted to ask one quick question to either one of you. With the implementation of this system, and it was really the first large-scale deployment in San Antonio, I believe, was there any issues with agency adoption, particularly when you talk about, I mean, you were managing, you know, tens of agencies, multiple disciplines, law enforcement, state agencies, federal agencies. Was there any pushback, or were there any issues with the adoption or use by some of the agencies?
That's a great question, Mike. We did have over a dozen agencies involved in this. there was a little bit of hesitation at first, but once we pretty much introduced them to the product and told them it was web-based, smartphone-based, they were actually at the end of this very surprised how easy it was to use, number one. Number two, how quickly we were able to plug them into the know. And we'll get into a little bit more about the imaging of the phones and how we used iPhones and the web-based to do that. But I think everybody was kind of nervous about technology. Even our guys, you know, we issued over 200 iPhones with the app on it. And our guys were a little hesitant, but as soon as they picked up the phone, this is a product that they use on a daily basis. You know, most people have iPhones or smartphones. They were able to manipulate the phones and get the information they needed. And we'll see that here in a few minutes. This slide here is just looking at some of the closed circuit TV and some of the location stuff. So we knew exactly where all the cameras were. We knew exactly where, if something broke out, you know, we could actually get to the closest camera there without filing through every camera location, you know, in a line. We were able to pick it out on a map and look at it. So that was important to us. And then it was a time saver, to say the least, to be able to do that in real time on a map that you could look at and manipulate data. The Workforce app was what they use, and what you're seeing there, some screenshots of the Workforce app actually on the phones. That actually provided that map for everybody who had an iPhone. The green dots you see there are actually individuals with the iPhone app on. We were able to issue these phones and train these people within probably 5 to 10 minutes. We told them how to turn the app on, how to make sure that it was working properly. And then from there, it was basically using email or messenger like they would from their own phone. Again, another good picture, and there you'll see the graphics on the right there, just kind of how everybody could see where everybody else was, which was important. So not only as an incident commander in the unified command post, but as the regular patrol officer or medic on the street, you knew exactly where your backup was, your cover was, or the ambulance that you're going to be transporting this patient, walking him out of a crowd of 30,000, you knew exactly where it was going to be. So that map not only helped you and the people around you, but it helped speed up the response time for some of the resources that we had deployed just outside of that geofence footprint. Again, you could pull up anything on that Workforce app. You could call them, you could FaceTime, you could send messages. You'll see here how we utilize that to our advantage going through the rest of this. It was a huge advantage to us to be able to pass intel and information via text message and text groups. That's where we put everybody on a common operating platform. Outside agencies, Mike, like the question you'd asked, these dozen or so outside agencies have different radio channels, different this, different that, different encryptions on some of the phones. We gave them a phone with the platform in order to use it, and they were instantly connected and plugged into the information that we were pumping out or receiving from the field. So they were already in the common operating picture as soon as we handed them a phone.
So I think it's positive to put it into context here. If anybody out there has ever worked a large event before, a lot of times when you're dealing with these things, your personnel will come up on an incident. And so in this case, what it helped us to do is a police officer would come across and see somebody that needed EMS help. They would call for EMS. Well, a lot of times in these big festivals and things, it's an absolute nightmare to find out where that individual officer is. By using this platform, we were able to go in, actually see his individual location, and guide our units in there who were already also using the application to his exact location. So it cut down on response time. It made everything more efficient, and as well as getting faster medical care and services to anybody who needed it at the event. But
thanks, Brian. That's a good point. Yes. Brian brings up a very good point to that stuff. So in the large venues like this, having that common operating picture and that detailed information of mapping that we were able to manipulate and actually plot out there, creating footprints was pretty big for us. You'll have to forgive the delay. Brian's got sausage fingers when it comes to advancing the slide. Okay, great. So now what we have here is a picture of the imaging. So what we did was we took over those over 200 iPhones, basically imaged every one of them, and we were able to give them out to different avenues and venues here. And these guys did this overnight. So we had some of the TDEM, Texas Department of Emergency Management folks come in and help us. Some of their analyst guys and their techs come in to help get this done. All these phones were on FirstNet. All these phones were in the network. You have a picture there of a cellular on wheels, the cows they call them. basically amping up that cell phone coverage. But this was a big logistical, undertaking, and they were able to accomplish it fairly quickly. I am going to point out, though, that I told them to get red stickers for fire. They came back with pink, and they thought that was hilarious. So we were color coding them so that it was fire and policeman proof. But yeah, so we wound up with pink phones. But hey, it worked very well.
So Chief, let me ask you this real quick. The hardware issue, we're finding agencies that, we're getting such a great adoption of this industry best practice. They're running into those hardware issues where, an individual may show up with their own device and don't want to use it, which I completely understand. So what were some of your sources for the hardware? Did San Antonio actually purchase this hardware? Were there other agencies that were available to assist with the hardware deployment? What were some of your solutions there?
Yeah, good question. So basically, we did have some help from AT&T. They partnered with us, and they were actually partners with the Final Four, which really helped us. I think that's how they got the cow, was the relationship, the relationship that the Final Four had with AT&T. So we were provided the phones, we leased the phones, and we're able to turn them on. We paid the lease fee, but we were able to turn them on, get them quickly. I think that's where it really helped us, was being able to get this done quickly, was that relationship. So we put all this together. TDM, even the Texas Department of Emergency Management came in and helped us image these phones. Overnight, they set them all up and everything else. So it was a huge thing. And that AT&T also brought the FirstNet into play, and that was this was the first large deployment, actual deployment, other than training, for this to go.
Excellent, thank you.
And I think it's also important. To point out, Doug, about the preemption that FirstNet brings. And so if anybody out there has ever been to a large event, a concert or something like that, you've tried to talk on your cell phone, a lot of times you're going to see that that you don't have service or that you're getting booted off the system. The preemption that FirstNet brought in this first large scale incident that we've had was actually worked fantastically. We never had a problem with connectivity. We never had a problem getting the messages across. And it's gone to the point to where our Texas Department of Emergency Management is actually purchasing several cell phones now, and it was also deployed during Hurricane Harvey in South Texas. And so that preemption that the FirstNet brings and the system that they're using, as a result of this incident, we were able to communicate and track resources during Harvey and some other large-scale events. So it has worked out very well for us.
Excellent.
Real quick, too, just to point out, this would have been, we would have been able to go ahead and utilize our city-issued work phones, the ones we have for daily operations. We could have put the app on there if we given the time. Just imaging our personal phones, we had to do some things that would have taken us logistically more time than actually renting these and getting it done. Plus, we were able to control, when you assign a phone, we gave it a post and not a person. So each day, the officers would change or the medic would change or whatever, but that post never changed. That phone stayed constant. So we were able to issue it, bring it back in, and then reissue it with the same post, so we didn't have to go through changing the identity of the phone or anything like that. The work phones would be easier on a long-term basis, and we are looking at that as one of the projects moving forward for San Antonio. Some of our divisions are going to be able to use their work phones and put this app on there. We are also able to utilize our tablets. Anything web-based, the tablets, PCRs are going to be able to have this app on them so that we can track our tablets that we utilize for patient care. Those will also be able to be put into Esri, and we can be able to track that tablet. So this is, not just related to being able to get this many phones, but it's also to what you use in your daily operational stuff too. I will say TDM had 5,000 phones. They have those available to them for deployment during times of, natural disaster or emergency. So that always helps to have a friend like that in your backyard.
Well, and I think it's important for leadership to be able to identify where those sources are, and there are multiple, like you're saying. And my experience personally, like you're saying, the state agencies may have some, and certainly some of our vendors, some of our private partners can supply that hardware as needed per event. So we've got our next poll question coming up, and there it is. Is your agency sharing a GIS-based common operating picture to outside participating agencies? And much like Doug was describing, he had multiple agencies at the state and federal level, and even piping it back to the state EOC offsite in Austin. So is your agency sharing a GIS-based common operating picture? So the options here are: my agency shares paper map products only, my agency uses GIS map products within our agency only, or my agency shares cloud-based maps to participating outside agencies. So again, is your agency sharing a GIS-based common operating picture? And we'll get the results coming up now. So we can see there about the majority is using cloud-based maps to share incident information with participating agencies. So that's excellent that the majority is doing that. Wonderful. All right, Chief, you can pick back up.
All right, go ahead. All right, so this is just a screenshot here of some of the management stuff that we did. That iOS image pushed via the cloud accounts, location services, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. You know, we had all those, everything in the group text. We had master, the ability here in the Southwest Texas Fusion Center, which is our Intel branch, our Fusion part, in our information management, pretty much. And then we had the ability, because we'd set all this up, to have master accounts. So we could push information to select groups. We could put information to everybody. We had the ability to selectively push what we needed to push out, which is important. You don't want intel going to everywhere unless you need it to go. So we had that ability. Supervisors got some things, police officers got some, fire got some, and everybody got some. So I will show some pictures here of some of those things that we were doing with this, the text groups and everything else. This is a conglomerate of all the things that we had we utilized for it. The very top left one was an interesting one. That Pelican case you see there had a little light glowing on it, and somebody saw it and they called in, said it's a suspicious package. Now, most agencies, when you roll on a suspicious package or a bombwood device, you're rolling, you know, probably half a dozen fire trucks, SWAT, EMS, everybody's coming. So to have that deployment of resources is a very big undertaking. And this is a prime example of where we utilized the phones. The officer that had this took a picture, sent it into the Fusion Center. Fusion Center sent it over to some of our intel guys on the fire side, because I think we thought we knew what it was. We said where it was. We contacted our hazmat group, and it turned out to be a remote air monitoring station. So it was vetted within probably 5 to 10 minutes, without a single fire truck being deployed, without a single ambulance or police officer, other than the one that was on patrol there, having to move. We didn't evacuate a building. We didn't do anything else. So you'll see here how that plays into the large scale incidents, because I'm fixing to show you how bad this could have been if we didn't have the ability to pass real-time information and data and vet these responses. We had everything, as you can see up here, from pit pockets, scalpers. We had an Austin police officer who came in who was carrying his weapon. His credentials looked a little shady, so they were able to take a picture of him, send him back. We were able to vet him out, and he was a legitimate police officer. Just had an older ID, you know. So we had the ability to pass information, not only to law enforcement, but to fire as well. It was a big network of things that we were doing in this group share and intel share. Here's some more of the background info. Again, the top left that you see there, kind of eccentric to fire, we had a bag policy in place that mandated clear bags only inside the venues. So people who either forgot, didn't know, weren't told, would bring bags and just dump them. They'd empty them into clear bags that they got, and they'd dump their bags on the street. We collected over 240 abandoned bags and packages. That would have been a huge undertaking in 3 days to do 240 suspicious package responses if we would have had to send units out to vet every single one of those. We were able to take photos, pass those photos, and vet everything that we were doing, from 1 or 2 ground crews sweeping the area and just picking up abandoned bags. Basically, what we wound up doing was creating a clean zone, and anything that was abandoned, whether people had called it in or not, wound up going to the property room. So we didn't wait for it to be even called in. We were very proactive with it and actually took those things right off before they even became a problem. You'll see a number of pictures of children in there. There's actually one lost mother in there. Her phone died while she was, I think, at the beer booth or the restroom. And so she couldn't reunite with her family. So she saw a uniformed officer, went up to him and told him she was lost from her family. So sent a picture of her out, and other people couldn't find her. They went again to a firefighter or EMT, and we were able to reunite them and get them coordinated to reunite them. None of these lost kids were lost for more than probably 15 or 20 minutes because of the pictures we were able to take and be able to find them. They would send them out, and the officer, you know, 100 yards away, by the funnel cake, said, "Hey, I got this kid here." He sent a picture out. "Hey, I've got the parents here looking for little Johnny." And then they show a picture to the parents. "Is this Johnny?" "It is." "Okay, we know exactly where he's at." So we utilized that network exclusively for the lost kids, but it was great that we were able to do that because we were able to vet these fairly quickly. So that's kind of what we did for the Final Four. Now, we had about 2.5 weeks before our Fiesta event. Again, the Fiesta is that 10-day celebration, just like Mardi Gras. We were able to bring everything back in, kind of debrief and go over some of the after action things that we'd seen, and redeploy all of this for our Fiesta events. We have 2 major parades in our Fiesta events with probably 300,000 spectators along the parade route. It's the largest night parade in the U.S. We have a very large day parade as well. So we were able to take this and push this back out, different mapping, change some of the things, the venues we had, and do some mapping for those. So this was kind of a bonus for us that we had already kind of proofed this. Again, over 110 citywide events, 4 million people over the entire duration. Oyster Bake we had, which was one of our local college events that is very popular. Over 3 nights, you have 70,000 people. The night in Old San Antonio is basically a kind of a food event over 4 nights. It was huge. We usually wind up having to shut the gates because everybody's trying to get in there. Again, the street parades. We have a river parade here. San Antonio is known for the river walk. We do have a river parade with over 200,000 people crammed onto the river walk or overlooking the river walk trying to see this parade. So as you can see, these are huge events within a larger event that we were able to utilize all this web-based mapping, web-based data management for. These are some of the things with some of the pictures from the Fiesta. We used to have to use hard maps, kind of divide them out, things like that. We were able to digitize a lot of this and overlay those special points in there. Again, just the mapping itself, those guys did a wonderful job of creating those points on the map so that we had common referencing and the common operating picture and not a static map from years before. One key thing you'll see again, and I'm going to talk about this later, was we were able to use drone picture imaging, and able to map that within hours of an event start. And I'll go over a little bit more of that later. Oh, there it is right there. So the carnival one in the middle there is the carnival. It sets up in the parking lot of the Alamo Dome. And basically Friday night, it's nothing. By Saturday morning, it's a full-fledged carnival. Well, every year things change a little bit, this, that, and the other. So as they're setting it up, they get everything set up just before they open. We were able to fly a drone overhead, take a picture, bring it down, take that picture and image it so that we have a real-time operating picture of exactly where everything was as it sat on that parade, on the parking lot grounds. So it was basically the most current, realistic image we could get of that venue. And then we piped that picture out to everybody else. We did plot and points on there. You know, you labeled the corn dog booth, the candy booth, where the cops are, where the first aid station is, everything else just like that. The night in Old San Antonio, again, was another map we did. And then the day and the night parade routes were huge, that we were able to plot those and actually see real-time assets along the parade routes. Again, it's really hard to describe, kind of get people in 300,000 people. You have somebody who's sick or injured or a fight breaks out, trying to describe exactly where you are. Well, with a common operating picture in these maps, we were able to tell exactly where they were. The things we took away from these projects were things that I think we're going to carry forward for quite some time. The interoperability between fire, police, EMS, and our outside partners was huge. The ability to have the same common operating picture and not have to worry about bringing in an outside agency and catching them up to speed if something had happened was a very big plus for us. When we said, hey, we have a problem here and this is what's going on, everybody knew exactly what we were talking about. We were all on the same page, speaking the same language. And that's very important when you're talking about event management and time to deploy resources. This is a very good solution for large venues, although we are looking at ways to utilize this data, this technology, and we'll talk about that in a minute, in our everyday lives. As firefighters, we process a plethora, I'll use that big word for Brian, a plethora of information. And that information sometimes goes into usable formats and sometimes it's put in file cabinets. One of the things we're looking at going forward is how do we get everything we capture as a department and make that so that we can share it with our partners in the event that we need it, or the event that it becomes relevant to what we're doing. And that's something we're going to be doing going forward. Again, we had outside hires. You know, San Antonio only has so many police officers, and we still have to do 911 services. We have outside police officers that came in. We were able to issue them a phone, and bam, they were in our network. They were in our common operating picture. And it's like 63% of the officers there are from outside the city. And that's a large percentage of your security force not being on the same radio channel, not being on the same page before this event. After this event, the guys were like, man, I'd like to be plugged in because I knew what was going on. Even if they had to filter through the information, they were like, hey, I knew there were sick people here. I knew that this was going on, that the gates to Nios had been shut down, so I could tell people that. They were walking over that way. We could inform them of the stuff. So it was more than just being able to deploy resources where you needed them. That information sharing proved to be valuable to us to be able to provide officers with information so that they could provide it to the public as well. The workforce app worked great for us in the field and the on-site. Esri was on-site to help us with technical and logistical issues. I can't say enough about their support in this. We didn't need a whole lot of it, thank God, but when we did, they were there, and it went great. We were able to utilize it very well. So I'll let Brian take over from here, looking at some of the future things and planning we're doing with the Esri applications.
So thanks, Doug. You did a great job on that. My slides aren't nearly as pretty as Doug's, but hopefully they'll be just as attractive to everybody. But I also attended a couple of conferences, and I've talked to Mike as well, and we started looking at the different Esri apps and the things that we could do as a fire department into the future and using some of these applications through Esri. Again, we already use ArcGIS on a large scale basis to do any of the planning things when we're looking at annexation or through our accreditation processes, or just how we're normally looking at our community risk. We use a lot of Esri-based products for that. But where could we take these things into the future? City of San Antonio is very large. We cover over 500 square miles as a fire department, and we literally have tens of thousands of commercial structures. With a very limited budget, a very limited amount of inspectors that we have, pre-planning and inspections becomes very difficult in a city this size. So how could we use the Esri applications in order to help us with this? Through the Collector app, we're looking at different ways in which we can do that. So I can give my personnel a tablet that they already use for medical tracking to actually go out to a building, plot different things on a map, and then transition that map into my CAD system. So at least we have access, we have electrical panels, we have gas shafts, anything that you want to see in there, we can actually plot on an actual map of the building. Through us, the pre-planning process was cumbersome because of having to draw buildings to scale and all these other things, or getting into a CAD type system and having to draw them out in the computer. This makes it very easy to where we're actually looking at those points on the actual building. Also with that, we're looking at interfacing different information in with it. So we would look at the Bexar County Appraisal District information to look at sizes of buildings, the different commercial structures or different types of structures out there, to where we can figure needed fire flow. We can figure a lot of different things off of that information. Fire loss is another thing that we can look at if we actually know the actual appraisal for that property. We can get a more accurate fire loss on a given structure, but that also leads to what we've saved. So if it was worth this much and we cost this much in damage, now we've saved this much, which is a very positive number that you want to start showing to your city council and political representatives. Our inspections core of or section of the city, which is our development services district, uses a Hansen database to do inspections. They track certificate of occupancy changes. All of those things are of interest to the fire department. The fire that you see to the right there is actually the Ingram Square fire, to where last year we lost one of our own firefighters, Scott Dean. And part of the LODD report that came back from the state had brought up certificate of occupancy. We didn't realize that the certificate of occupancy had changed for that structure, which was one of the contributing factors in that fire. We're using business intelligence software, so like Click or Tableau. We're actually using Tableau to bring all of these different databases together to generate this report, in addition to using the Esri-based products. What does this help us with? We're currently going through the CFAI accreditation process. And so to better serve not only our citizens, to better protect our firefighters, but also to help us with the requirements for accreditation of continuous improvement, this is one of the things that we're looking for. In that, it's also well being said, we have already created a hydrant maintenance application that we're using the Esri collector application for. And so all of our fire stations are able to go out to their area of responsibility. They have a map on their tablet that they walk up, they do the inspection of the hydrant, they put the information in real time. It gets reported back to our water district, who can do the maintenance on that hydrant, do anything it needs to do. Plus, we're also able to take that information and transition it into our CAD system. So real time, as we're approaching structure fires, we can see whether a hydrant is out of service or in service based on that Esri application. So it's been very good for us so far, and we've had a lot of success. This is the first year we're rolling it out. We're about 35% complete, but given that San Antonio has about 35,000 hydrants, that'll let you know about how far we've gotten on it. The next thing that we're looking at using it for is swiftwater rescue. South Texas, being San Antonio, is basically in kind of a valley. We have a lot of low water crossings. Flash flooding is a big problem for us. Water rescue tends to be something that is a dangerous situation for us, just because we have found that if we have a car trapped in hard water or high water, we have to go out several times to ensure that that car is empty, because you can imagine how many calls we get for the same vehicle in high water, to where we've gone to a system of basically marking the antenna of the car with orange tape. What we're looking at now is actually taking a photo of that car once it's been searched one time, uploading that into an event in the CAD system. So if we get another call in the same area for the same type of description, we can send a picture actually out to our crews and say, hey, this one's already been searched, which increases the safety of our firefighters. The other thing that we do here is we try to charge people that we have to rescue out of high water situations. There's fines for passing up barricades. There's fines for us having to go into water and collect those persons. But we found that the data collection from that has been very difficult, because obviously you're in the middle of a thunderstorm or a rain event. You're trying to write on a paper form. So we're going to be using the collector app in order to start getting that information and filling out those forms. And what this enables us to do is put that in one big event, and then we can start over next time. And so where a normal database is just ongoing, this one allows us to close out that event, that big rain event, and then we can move on to the next thing. So those are a few things that we're looking at using Esri applications for in the future. We're continuing to look through several different things and several opportunities that the fire department may have to use these applications. It looks like you got a poll question there, Mike.
Thanks, Chief. Sure do. But I just want to make a quick comment about, that's a comprehensive application of the software, of the technology across, like we discussed at the beginning, not just operations, not just special events or significant events, but day-to-day planning issues, community risk reduction operations, and even, you're talking about the response during disasters, swiftwater rescue and the like. That's an amazing or an excellent model that many departments could follow. But as you said, our next poll question is: your agency deploying mobile applications in the field to collect incident data or track personnel? So much as you saw, the use of workforce during a special event, or as Chief Norris was describing, using Collector or a Survey 123 app to collect data during field response, is your agency deploying mobile applications in the field to collect data or track personnel? And the options here are: my agency is not currently performing data collection, my agency collects incident data and manually updates maps, my agency uses mobile apps for real-time data and tracking. And our response is pretty evenly across the board: not currently performing data collection at 33%, collects incident data and manually updates maps at 31%, or uses mobile apps for real-time data and tracking. So pretty good spread there at 35%. So Doug, I'll turn it back over to you. Talk about on the horizon.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. So, looking forward, there's, like Brian had talked about, there's a number of different things that we can look at going forward. We really, really look forward to the challenges of really finding what Esri can do for us. How are we going to be able to take this to the next level and utilize it in our day-to-day lives? I saw what it did for the Final Four and Fiesta. You know, where else can we plug this in? You know, we've had a number of other things come up. The 300th anniversary of San Antonio was this year. We've had events throughout the year we've utilized this for. I've got Rock and Roll Marathon coming up again. Every year we have this event. You know, so we're going to utilize it for this. And we were still using paper maps for the Rock and Roll last year. I look forward to that because this is all about information management and information sharing. The more people we can include into the more people we can include in the common operating picture, the better I think we can do our jobs, the more efficiently we can do our jobs, and the better utilization of our resources our incident commanders can deploy. So all over, there's ways to utilize the technology that people are utilizing every day just for entertainment. You know, the Facebook stuff, the Snapchat, all those things that kind of gave me the idea of looking at this as if my kids are using this to just communicate with each other and have a good time, how can I utilize that technology to make my job better, make my job safer, to make the community safer, and really better utilize what we're doing, you know? And that's kind of where this all came from, was that ability to take technology and apply it to our benefit. You know, we're very quick to take this and use it for entertainment or something like that, but you know, bringing this to work really makes a big difference, I think, in our community. So, you know, we look forward to that. Brian and I have been in conversation. I know Mike's been in there. You know, firemen inherently want to break things just because we want to see if we can get it to the point where, you know, can we break this? Can I come up with a problem that Esri can't solve or the software can't solve? Or would they actually be able to design something to fix my problem? So that's what I look forward to. I look for coming to something to them and making their guys go, you know? So we really, I think, are taking this to the next level and trying to move this forward. Brian, you got anything?
I just think it's always important that we always look at our firefighter safety, and then we always want to look at data collection, because that's going to lead to where we're going to go in the future. And so I don't think that, I think that this technology has its place. I think there's a lot of different applications that we can use this type of technology for. And I'm kind of like Doug, and I'll always quiz Mike is, hey man, well, can y'all do this? And he would always come back, yes, of course we can do that. It may take a little time, but we can get it done, which my next one is how much it's going to cost, but we won't get into that one here. But I think looking at the different technologies that we can use, not only for the data collection, but to enhance our personnel safety is something that's great. We've been able to use this application, or these applications, not only over a 500 square mile city like San Antonio, but we've used it all over South Texas when it looked at Hurricane Harvey and things like that, to where we can actually track resources in different cities. So if you're one of the believers, like I know me and Doug are, that information is power, and the more visions that we can get of anything that's happening in any type of situation is a good thing, then this would definitely be something to look at if you have any type of large scale incident or something coming up in the future.
Excellent. Thank you both. Strong or powerful statements about, you know, the use of GIS for response. I've got a couple questions. I've got multiple questions actually, but I'm just gonna be able to get to a couple of them. But I had two questions about grid systems or U.S. National Grid. And I will say, leading into the question, that, you know, U.S. National Grid is a layer you can easily add to any of our applications. So I know some of the maps, Doug, you were showing were actually the map, you know, on or within Workforce, which, you know, you may not have shown the grid system. But did you consider using a grid system or U.S. National Grid in your mapping products?
We did, and actually, when we came to the table, we had two different kind of designs. You know, we had police and fire, and one was using the existing grid system, and then one entity, I'm not gonna say who was which, but the other one had created a grid system based on just the footprint of what was there. So rather than recreating the wheel, we did have the ability to superimpose the grid system over it for better referencing. However, everything within inside that footprint, everything within inside that geofence was all reference based, because that's what guys were looking at. You know, they didn't have access. They did have access to the phone and the grids, and that's good for the management piece. But boots on the ground were really looking at different things. They use visual cues. So I think that was important. To have the ability to do both is important. And I think we did look at both, but each one has an application.
Excellent. Next question. So was there any issues, and the question is, was this deployed in the cloud, which after this full presentation, that obviously used a lot of the ArcGIS online capabilities. But as far as the overall application was deployed in the cloud, is that correct? And you can describe, was there any issues with law enforcement or fire department using cloud-based services?
Yes, it was cloud-based, and no, we did have discussions about security issues, things like that, but those were all addressed. Our IT guys were good about being able to do that and vet that if it was a secure network. You always worry about that in anything cloud-based, anything you're sharing, you worry about the security of the information you're sharing. And that's one thing that we've had talks about with you guys, Mike and Esri, and amongst ourselves is, we have CGIS information, we have HIPAA stuff. There's all kinds of information in there that needs to be protected. Are we doing the best job we can of protecting that information? For what we utilize this for, absolutely. We were able to do that through closed networks that people couldn't get into, and they were our networks sharing it with fire, police, or both. So I think having the cloud base is important to be able to share it, but you do need to ask those questions. I think as an entity, I think you need to be asking not only internally but externally about your safety or the safety of your cloud-based information.
And Mike, I think it's important to add that during the planning process of this whole thing, the information control or the control of the communications that were coming in was very important to Doug, and I know some of the law enforcement people that were sitting in the room. So we had a lot more information rolling in than we were actually putting out. However, there were things in the applications that Doug had built in, like evacuation plans, things like that, where in the event something did happen, we could instantly push that information out, and it was all at the ready. But being able to control that information that was going out was something that was very important to the security for law enforcement, but it was also something in our hip pocket that we had just in case we needed it. And so that went a long way. And as far as the cloud communications, the ease of operations of this whole thing is just like using an application on your phone. So when you say you can't teach an old fireman new tricks, that turns out to not be true. We could teach them how to use a cell phone, and it was very successful for us.
And also I'll add one advantage to the cloud-based application is scalability. So if you did have an incident within the incident and you had to add, several hundred other responders, or you're starting to do public information products to the public, evacuation zones or things of that nature, that cloud-based system can scale to handle just about any level of traffic. Where if you try to run the stuff on local servers, you may run into issues with that large amount of traffic. So one more question. Did you use Survey 123 for anything? And I'll add to that, do you plan on using Esri Survey 123 mobile application for anything, or have you looked at it?
Well, like I said, we have looked at Survey 123, and one of the ones that we're definitely looking at for is that water rescue scenario that we had talked about before. Right now, for the hydrant maintenance application, we're just using a collector type app for it. But everything is wide open at this point. We're constantly looking for ways that we can help our operations. If it is collector 123, then we may look at something like y'all did in Henrico County with the smoke detector application, things like that, so we can more accurately track where all of these smoke detectors are going, which also helps address our community risk reduction programs.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, both for this excellent case study presentation. I certainly enjoyed it and learned a lot. There are several more questions. I just want the audience to know that we have recorded all those questions, and we'll get them to Chief Berry and Chief Norris to answer over the next couple of days. Certainly, if you have any issues or any questions, our contact information there is currently on the screen. We'll follow up with an email that'll include our email and my phone number if you need to call for anything. And one last point I would like to make is that a majority of state and local government in the continental United States and internationally possibly, but certainly in the continental United States, already has access to most of the applications and capabilities that Doug and Brian have just demonstrated. So, if you have a local or state government account with us, those capabilities come with that account for the most part. So that's certainly something we can explore for you as well. Nothing more frustrating to run into, fire EMS service leadership that don't even realize what capabilities they already own. They're just not deploying it. So, Doug and Brian, again, thank you so much. I certainly enjoyed it. Great presentation, and everyone will follow up with some emails.
Thank you, Mike. Everybody have a great afternoon. Appreciate it.
Yeah, same here. Thanks, Mike, and hope everybody enjoyed it.